Hey, let me out, man. Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Malika Young Pagdadi inside my chest, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I was stuck in the black hole. I had to have somebody come and help me out, so I appreciate you helping me out, man. Dang, it was dark in there. So as you guys know, Vladislav Artemiev and Wesley So they are playing each other currently for their match to see who advances to the finals. As you guys probably are aware, Wesley So has won his first match of that. So we will go till tomorrow. And as long as Wesley So wins or ties the second match, the second series of 4 games, then he will advance to the finals. So this game right here is round 4, game 4 between them. And so yeah, so if you guys well, of course, for my people in the Philippines, I will say mabuhay. Masaya Komakiti Kemuli Amasao Tayo. It is morning there. So I think a majority of you guys are up. So hopefully you guys are in a chess watching mood, so you can watch my video. But appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. And let me see, Mabuting Pagbadi, you got Lagi. Appreciate you guys very much. Anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say Dubre Otra. And Privyet, Kakadela, Spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. Appreciate it very much. If you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we have d4, knight comes to f6, we have bishop to f4, we have d5. So we start off with an Indian, and we're pretty much still in an Indian. It hasn't really transposed anything. A majority of the stuff that will transpose, it doesn't include a bishop move. A lot of times you'll have like a solid structure like this, and a c4 will come, and then you'll have like a Queen's Gambit or Catalan type stuff. But we kind of have, I guess, like a London-esque type of position, but we do have e3, c5, knight comes to c3. We got pawn takes d4, pawn takes d4. We have bishop to g4, and this move is not super annoying. I mean, you can always like develop the knight here, or just play like bishop to e2 and just encourage a trade. Man, killing these arrows. But we do see f3, and this early on is kind of like showing white's intent to possibly castle queenside. You don't, I mean, every now and then, yeah, you can throw the f-pawn and then castle, castle kingside. But a lot of the times, it just kind of leaves you a little bit too open for too long, because you do have to develop all these pieces before you get castled. But we have bishop back to d7, queen comes to d2. And this is just further like showing the intent to castle queenside. We have knight to c6, and then we have g4. And so this is actually a must-win game for Vladislav Artemiev. So he has to win the game to tie Wesley So for this match. So he is playing pretty much as aggressively as possible. G4 is pretty kamikaze. You're opening yourself up crazy on the king side. So you guys are sure that white's not castling king side. The king is still kind of stuck in the center. So it's a little bit early to be throwing pawns out there. We have e6, knight g to e2, and then we have rook to c8, which is the novelty. Now, black understands that white is probably going to, castle queenside. So, put this rook on this open file and, try to hit this little tender point over here. Once, the king does get castled, the king is sitting right behind c2. So we have a knight down to d1. We have bishop to e7. We got g5. So, like I said, white is like throwing the whole kitchen sink at black. They're like, hey, man. Like, I want to, like, cause the most chaos ever. So we have knight to h5, and we have bishop back to e3. We're trying to preserve the bishop, and it might kind of look like this knight is grim on the rim, but it's kind of purposeful. It has a possibility of kind of trying to, maybe if this knight moves, to jump in and, after bishop moves here or something like that. But you're not too worried about it. Bishop comes to d6. We see knight to f2. Queen comes to b6, and we have knight to d3 just in the nick of time, making sure that we protect this vulnerable pawn over here. So we have knight back to e7, bishop comes to h3, we see bishop to b5, and then we actually see castles by white. And we have queen to a6, it's always useful to move king to b1. I mean, not 100% of the time, but it's usually pretty useful to move king to b1. When you do castle queenside, because, this pawn Once you castle, it's not defended by anything. So, I mean, you know, either you want to go hit A3. But a lot of the times when you do have your bishop still here and the queen here, you press A3. You definitely can see some sacrifices going on. So, you know, that's not the safest thing. So, king to B1 is usually the safest. Bishop takes D3. And then this is, I mean, somewhat of a critical point in the game because you have the ability to take back two different ways. You can take back with the pawn, or you can take back with the queen. Taking back with the queen is far superior because it just basically gets a more simplified trade. But we actually see pawn takes D3 in the game. And this is actually kind of unfortunate because this bishop is like really kind of dead. It doesn't have any scope this way. It doesn't have any scope this way. So, I mean, once G6 comes, which it's going to come at some point in the game, you know, this bishop is like super, super dead. So, you know, this kind of hurt Artemiev's position just a little bit. So, you know, if we were to take with the queen, you know, you'd probably see queen takes and then rook takes. And as you guys can see, this structure is much better. You know, you're not really getting attacked too much. You know, white is actually in a pretty nice position right here. Still kind of equal, but I mean, black is maybe just kind of slightly better. So, like I said, pawn takes D3. We have queen over to B6. Rook comes to C1. And, you know, we're not worried about the bishop, you know, kind of seeing through because the bishop is like completely inactive now. Rook takes C1, rook takes C1. And then, like I said, we do have G6. So, I mean, yes, this knight isn't the best, but, you know, that's not too big of a concern for black. So, knight comes to C3. We have castles by black. Bishop comes to G4. We see rook over to C8. Like I said, not worrying about the position opening up over there. Bishop takes H5. Pawn takes H5. And then we do have H3. So king comes to G7. And, you know, we're getting kind of into an endgame. You know, and so the king at some point is, you know, trying to see if he can advance a little bit forward. He's pretty safe on the light squares because, you know, you don't have a light square bishop as white. And plus, this knight doesn't really have a great way to kind of penetrate into the position anywhere. So, you know, the king is actually pretty safe kind of walking out. We see knight down to E2. Rook takes C1. Queen takes C1. We have knight to F5. And this is just like making the position of this bishop like just even worse. Because not only does it not have any scope anywhere, but now it's getting attacked by the knight. So the bishop comes up to F4. You know, you really do want to trade this bishop off for black's bishop because, I mean, like I said, your bishop is just completely horrible. And you don't want to have to, like, you know, back it up here or, you know, do anything like this. And especially now, I mean, this pawn is hit. So, you know, it's something has to kind of give. So we see bishop takes F4 and then we see knight takes E4 or knight takes F4. Sorry. We have actually reached the point in the game. There is a winning move in the position for black. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video and guess the winning move, go ahead and do so. Okay, so before we get into the winning move, I will show you what was played in the game. Now, keep this in mind. Wesley So has already won a game in this match. This is the last game, so all he needs is a draw. So in his calculations and in his desires, if like a draw gets you literally the same thing as a win does, why not just go ahead and just go for the draw? You know, that's kind of how it is. It's not super complicated to go into the win. And I mean, I'm sure that if it was a much-win situation, Wesley would have went ahead and just went for this move. But the fact of the matter is, Artemiev is losing this game. So, I mean, he kind of has to, you know, go into the line that he goes into because, you know, he definitely doesn't want to lose. But, I mean, the draw doesn't help him either. So, what we actually saw in the game was queen takes D4. And we actually get into a repetition. So after queen takes D4, we see knight takes H5 with check. King comes to G6. We see knight to F4 with check. King to G7. Knight to H5 with check. King comes to G6. Knight back to F4. King to G7. Knight back to H5. And we have a threefold repetition. So this is actually how the game ended right here on Move 33. So, you know, Wesley So secured, you know, his draw. So he won the first round, the first match of games. But if we go back, after knight takes F4, there was actually a winning move. It's a little bit complicated. Like I said, it's not the easiest win to just see. It takes a lot of calculation. But after knight takes F4, knight takes D4 is the winning move. So if you guess knight takes D4, like, good job, because you are noticing that white has quite a bit of weaknesses in their position. You know, this pawn is very weak. You know, this pawn is very weak. You know, this king is going to possibly start to try to come into the to the situation. You know, this queen you know, if this knight was to move, is eyeing G1. So there are a lot of threats in the position for white. So if you try to, let's say, hold, you know, kind of like your pawns in your position with queen to E3, we would see knight back to C6. And, you know, you're going to be giving up a little bit too much ground, like I said, if you allow queen down here to G1, because you are going to be dropping this pawn next move. So, you know, it's just more beneficial for you to trade queens on B6. Pawn would take B6. And there really isn't a good way to stop knight to E5. But this is just kind of like the dire situation of your position. King will probably come to C1. Knight will come to E5. Like I said, you can't stop it. King to D2 to make sure that the knight can move and, you know, you can secure this pawn. But knight taking F3. You know, it's just, you know, you're probably going to check or something like that here. But, I mean, you're already down. Like, now you're down 2 pawns. And, I mean, this is really just the nature of the position. If we were to go back after knight takes D4, if you attempted to go ahead and just do an alternate move, let's say knight takes H5 with check, you know, king comes down to G6, knight comes down to F4. But in this particular situation, like I said before about the light squares, you know, the king has the ability to come down to F5. And now the problem for, you know, the situation is the fact that, you know, this king is very active compared to your king. You know, you just have too many pawns for black, and they're just going to start rolling. I mean, immediately you are threatening this pawn. You want to do some, you know, queen kicking around before that point, because, you know, this is a discovery situation. So you want to be just careful the way you're playing. But like I said, as you guys can see, I mean, there are just too many weak points in white's position for this to really be held. This queen is going to improve itself. You know, you're just going to just be rolling your pawns down, and you do have an extra pawn. So, I mean, the goal is to, like, start using these central pawns to kind of break up this structure and, you know, get yourself, I mean, you're going to be able to get yourself a pass pawn at some point. So, it is just not something, you know, that Wesley so really wanted to go into, because, like I said, he just needed a draw. So, you know, it's like, why make it complicated when a draw does just fine? So, that's pretty much what he went ahead and did. So, that is that game. So, for all of my people in the Philippines, let me get these good mornings. See if I can cut out before 13 minutes. So, maanyong buntag, mayad na agahan, 9 bag na bigat. Masanso siya kabason, marhe na aga, buenos dias. Maayong aga, mapia na uma, kapian kapuno dios, mayapa abak. Mayad na aga, mapia agay, mapia kapa pizza, my big abukla. Maraja na buntag, marya may na, maupe na aga, kasanyangan si ilabi. Merci, assalamu alaikum, and salam. Appreciate you guys very much. Spasibo for my people that are coming from Russia. And maraming salamat aking makaibigan for my people in the Philippines. Makita tayo mamaya, and I will see you guys next time.